Welcome to this explainer. Today we're unpacking what is easily one of the most consequential legal battles in modern tech history, Elon Musk versus Sam Altman and OpenAI. But we aren't going to be looking at this through the usual lens of Silicon Valley gossip or, billionaire feuds. Instead, we're treating this entire dispute as a critical analysis of enterprise system stress. We want to look at the true architectural cost of scaling artificial intelligence. Basically, what actually happens when the foundational nonprofit programming of an organization collides head-on with the astronomical real-world demands of hyperscale growth.
It really all boils down to a single, incredibly provocative question. Can a nonprofit shell safely govern a trillion-dollar hyper-scaled AI engine? Think about it. When you design a system that's meant purely for charity, and then you inject it with billions of dollars of corporate capital, does that architecture hold up? Or does it just completely buckle under the pressure? That right there is the core architectural stake of this entire saga.
Okay, let's dive into this because the sheer scale we are talking about here is almost unfathomable. $150 billion. That was the potential scale of the damages claimed by Elon Musk. He literally sought to force OpenAI and Microsoft to disgorge up to $150 billion in what he claimed were ill-gotten gains, with the goal of returning that massive pile of wealth back to OpenAI's nonprofit arm. When the stakes get this astronomical, we aren't just talking about a little startup disagreement anymore. We are squarely in the hyperscale realities of frontier technology.
Section 1. System Output, the Verdict.
To truly understand how this system crashed, we need to reverse engineer the event, starting right at the end with the final system output, the highly anticipated May 2026 federal trial verdict. On May 18, 2026, a 9-member advisory jury in Oakland, California delivered a unanimous verdict. And they did it incredibly fast. I'm talking less than 2 hours of deliberation. The jury decisively dismissed the claims brought against Sam Altman, Greg Brockman, and OpenAI. It was a swift, resounding end to a really grueling 3-week trial that had basically paraded a who's who of tech executives through the courtroom.
And the presiding judge, Yvonne Gonzalez-Rogers, immediately affirmed the jury's decision. She specifically noted the substantial amount of evidence supporting their finding, stating she was prepared to dismiss the case on the spot. This grounded the system's final output in absolute, unshakable legal authority. But, it begs the question, on what exact grounds was it dismissed?
So the crucial point comes down to the statute of limitations. Because here's the thing, the jury didn't necessarily decide whether OpenAI ethically betrayed its original mission. Instead, they ruled on a strict timeline. Under California law, Musk had a very specific window to file his lawsuit after discovering the alleged harm. The jury found that Musk basically knew, or definitely should have known, about OpenAI's restructuring into a profit-oriented entity well before 2021. So because he waited until 2024 to actually sue, his claims were simply filed too late. The clock had run out.
Section 2. Source Code, Founding Mission.
To really grasp the alleged breach that led to this massive trial, we have to rewind all the way back to 2015. We need to examine the original source code of this enterprise to see exactly what allegedly broke down. In 2015, OpenAI was established purely as a nonprofit organization. The co-founders, which included Elon Musk, Sam Altman, Greg Brockman, and Ilya Sutskever, explicitly designed it this way for the, quote, benefit of humanity. The original coding of this entire system was meant to be a safeguard. It was a counterbalance designed to protect the world against any single for-profit company monopolizing advanced artificial intelligence.
And Musk provided some very vital fuel to get this system running in the first place, contributing roughly $38 million in early funding. Now, in court, Musk argued that this financial input came with strict charitable strings attached, basically a binding agreement that the tech would remain open and nonprofit. The defense, on the other hand, argued that the money was simply a tax-deductible donation with absolutely no legal strings attached whatsoever.
Section 3. Hyperscale, Capped Profit Pivot.
As we all know, the AI landscape did not stay static. The computational power required to actually build these frontier AI models skyrocketed, and the original architecture was just failing to generate the necessary capital. Enter the system patch, the capped profit pivot, and this brilliantly illustrates the tension at the heart of our entire explainer. On one side, you've got the 2015 nonprofit model, noble, open, but totally starved for the billions needed to run supercomputers. On the other side, you have the 2019 capped profit model, a hybrid corporate structure explicitly designed to attract top-tier talent and massive compute power while technically still answering to the nonprofit board. It was an evolution born out of absolute necessity just to stay competitive in the AI race.
The actual mechanics of that exact pivot were kind of unprecedented. By 2019, Musk had already departed the board following some internal clashes over control. So the remaining leadership completely restructured OpenAI. They created a for-profit subsidiary that was capped in its financial returns. This structural adaptation was meant to act as a bridge between that altruistic founding mission and the frankly ruthless economic realities of the modern tech industry.
And the financial result of that patch? Absolutely undeniable. $13 billion. That is the staggering amount of capital injected into the new capped profit entity by Microsoft between 2019 and 2023. This massive capital influx firmly transitioned the enterprise from a scrappy little research lab into a true hyperscaled commercial juggernaut, ultimately pushing its valuation toward a reported $1 trillion.
Section 4. Governance Vulnerability, the Lawsuit. Bolting a multi-billion-dollar for-profit engine onto a non-profit chassis creates immense strain. And this brings us to the core conflict, Musk's 2024 lawsuit, which we can really view as a brutal, formal stress test of this newly patched governance architecture. Let's move to the timeline and see how this builds. We start with the idealistic founding in 2015. Then, the internal system rift that led to Musk's departure in 2018. Next is the critical restructuring in 2019 to secure all that capital. And finally, the boiling point, the 2024 lawsuit filed by Musk. It's a very clear, chronological map of a growing governance vulnerability, culminating in a spectacular legal collision.
When the system was actually brought before the court, the legal architecture looked exactly like this. The plaintiff, Musk, claimed a breach of charitable trust and unjust enrichment, essentially arguing that the nonprofit shell had been hollowed out for private gain. The defense, OpenAI and Microsoft, bypassed arguing the underlying philosophy and went straight for procedural logic. They argued the filing was untimely and outside the statute of limitations, framing the whole lawsuit as a hypocritical attempt by Musk to slow down a major rival to his own AI company, xAI.
Musk basically served as the primary vulnerability reporter here. His perspective, which was captured powerfully during his first day on the witness stand, was crystal clear. He stated, "It's not okay to steal a charity. If it's okay to loot a charity, the entire foundation of charitable giving will be destroyed." He strongly alleged that the nonprofit was treated merely as a shell, transferring intellectual property and talent to the for-profit arm while completely abandoning its open-source safety principles.
But, the truth is, the system had already shown some serious signs of buckling under this exact strain way before Musk ever filed his suit. Just look at the events of November 2023. The nonprofit board abruptly fired CEO Sam Altman, only to literally rehire him days later after a massive employee revolt and major intervention from Microsoft. That chaotic weekend was a massive precursor stress test. It proved just how fragile the governance structure really was when attempting to balance nonprofit oversight with immense commercial power.
Section 5. Unresolved System Bugs.
The trial is over. The case was dismissed. But that definitely doesn't mean the system is completely fixed. As we conclude our analysis, we have to look at the systemic aftermath and the lingering unresolved bugs out there in the enterprise landscape. Now, what's really interesting about this outcome is the core takeaway of this entire explainer. A procedural win does not equal architectural validation. OpenAI won the case simply because Musk waited too long to file his lawsuit. The jury never actually ruled on the merits of whether creating a multi-billion-dollar capped profit entity betrayed the original charitable trust. Surviving the statute of limitations keeps the company intact for a potential IPO, but it leaves all those deep ethical and structural questions entirely unanswered.
And honestly, those unanswered questions, they're now industry-wide bugs. How do we responsibly govern frontier AI systems? Is it fundamentally impossible to balance nonprofit altruism with the staggering commercial scale required to build these massive models? And as developers race toward trillion-dollar valuations, how will they handle the inevitable wave of competitor litigations and tight regulatory scrutiny? This lawsuit was really just the first major clash in a much, much longer war over AI architecture.
Which leaves us with this final critical thought to ponder. What actually happens when frontier technology simply outgrows its original governance code? As we push further and further into the age of hyperscaled AI, we may find that the biggest risk isn't necessarily just the technology itself, but the deeply flawed human systems we build to try and contain it. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the architecture